tonight, it's really my pleasure to welcome back John C. from Hamilton, Ontario. Today's workshop is number 3 of a 6-part series that John's helping us out with so that we can understand emotional sobriety a little bit better and maybe from a slightly different angle. Today's talk is going to be about discovering new possibilities. The first 2 talks in the series are on our YouTube channel, The Science of Self-Acceptance and Mindfulness for the 12-Stepper. So you can spend lots of time with John in the next few days or even few hours. John has more than 50 years of sobriety. He maintains an active recovery life by practicing and teaching evidence-based methods to improve well-being. We're really glad you're here, John, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thank you for coming and sharing with us.
You're welcome, Susie. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for inviting me back. It's always a pleasure to be invited back someplace, isn't it? You know, I can remember the days when I wasn't invited back. So it's always great to be with you. And I'm excited to share some ideas with you today around emotional and cognitive sobriety. And if you had access to my earlier talks, you may have learned that emotional sobriety is a big topic. It is huge. It isn't something that can be accomplished by a single solution, I believe. That there are different aspects for us to approach emotional sobriety. One of which is today's topic is maximizing strengths. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And so just let me introduce myself. I didn't come here today because I'm an alcoholic in AA. I came here today because I'm a certified mental health coach, as well as a practitioner in positive psychology. And the reason why those things are important to me is that I learned in my 50 years of sobriety that sometimes what happens is that I could be physically sober, but that doesn't necessarily mean I am cognitively or emotionally sober. And unlike dropping alcohol, emotions come and go, thoughts come and go. And it's something I learned to deal with, or had to learn to deal with at moment basis. And it's never fixed. It's never always right. I don't arrive at some place. It's an interaction between my experiences that ever changing. And it is critical to me to have the tools in place so I can be free from emotional overwhelm and free from this idea of self-criticism and limiting beliefs, all of which occurred over my lifetime, and I believe created the space for me to become an addict. Now, I'm going to present some ideas today that are contrary to what you hear in the 12-step rooms. And I don't mean to be controversial about this. I don't mean to be any of that. What I really want to point to is some other things that perhaps you're not thinking about or in a conversation with, according to what we believe emotional sobriety is. So emotional sobriety is this idea that we can handle any emotions and be with any emotions, any ways of thinking, without any alarm or concern, without trying to force or ignore, avoid, suppress. All of these things are tactics I used in order to keep the pain level down so I can numb myself and I wouldn't have to feel the pain of certain emotions and certainly the embarrassment of limiting beliefs and negative thinking. So that's the way I approached it. And I always go back to this idea of in the doctor's opinion in the big book. And Dr. Silkworth says, you know what? Alcoholics are restless, irritable, and discontent. And when you examine those 3 words, what I discovered in those 3 words later on was that I was trying to deal with life in a way in which frustrated me. and the way in which I was restless and irritable because I couldn't get my own way. And I come to learn it has a lot to do with how I process emotions and my thoughts. And ultimately, the way I think and the way I feel will determine how I behave. And I'd like to share a little bit about that with you. So I said I'm a certified mental health coach. I took an interest in it because sometimes we create what we need, and I needed some emotional sobriety. When I was about 25 years sober, I come to realize that I was in a very dark space, and that the fear I thought I had gotten rid of actually returned, and I was like a deer in the headlights, staring at some very uncomfortable decisions I needed to make, but I couldn't make. And I come to realize that sometimes in sobriety, I thought I dealt with something until the occasion comes up that is so significant that these old patterns do return. And at first I was shocked by that. I thought, what's the matter with me? How can I be so stupid to miss this? And all this self-criticism I had around myself, only to learn that this is what happens with human beings. We have dominant patterns based in childhood, and we're trying to understand how to deal with authority figures in our lives, and we're trying to make the best out of our life, and so we can survive and be safe. And many of those decisions and judgments, almost all of them actually, are incomplete. There's a bit of truth to them, and mostly false. And I love the set aside prayer where we speak about, please let me set aside everything I think I know about me. And this is the topic today is very much in that center. It's in the wheelhouse of not knowing who I really am. Because I'll tell you frankly, who I am was my self-reflection and self-judgment about myself, jumping to conclusions, having bits of memory and what things meant to me. In other words, if I had a situation growing up, it was the situation, which was the reality, but I made it mean something about me. And that's where the story comes in, the falsehood comes in as my meaning towards what happened. So for instance, if I failed at school, that meant I wasn't smart enough. It never occurred to me that I should have studied. If I wasn't perform well at sports, I just wasn't coordinated enough. Or if I was going to ask a girl out on a date, was I good looking enough or able to ask the person? And all of these situations that we each grow up in, we make things mean something about ourselves. And we come to a conclusion, an unconscious conclusion, by the way, that we've labeled ourselves in a particular way that really defines who we are. And really none of that is true. I'll give you an example very quickly. I can say I am selfish. I think that would be, part of the conversations we have around the room, that I am selfish kind of thing. The word I am speaks to my nature. It speaks to my identity. And if I continue to say to myself that I am selfish, I become that. And I don't separate it anymore from my behavior. I have these things define me as who I am. And what does a selfish person do who believes that in their nature that they're selfish? There's only one natural outcome of that, and that is that they do selfish things. It only stands to reason, doesn't it? So this is the way it works. When we talk about in the set aside prayer, do set aside everything I think I know, what I'm saying is that I'm going to forget about the story I have about myself, because it's thwarted with incompleteness, biases, conditions on standards of which there's no real standards that I measure myself against, but somehow or another I've done that. Now, just to complete this conversation, I have selfish behaviors, but who I am is something different than my behaviors. And as step 2 really speaks about the nature of this, it speaks about being restored. For us to be restored means we go back to something of originality, the original blessing, if you like. So if I am selfish, I cannot be restored to something because it's in my nature to be selfish. But if I have this idea that I have a sacred identity separate from my behaviors, I can be restored to that. And what I have to be is responsible for my behaviors surrounding ideas around self-centeredness and selfishness. So it's a whole different experience to experience the reflection this way, because I'm no longer condemning and criticizing who I am. I'm just sitting reflecting on the behaviors in which I participate in or don't participate in. And that leaves me with this position. It leaves me with this idea that God is causing me and giving me the power to adjust these behaviors I have, which most of us call defects of character. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story before we get started here, just to really get into the mood of what this talk is about. And the story I created, because I think it's important to begin to understand our frame of mind, our state of being, our self-view. So the story starts this way. Once upon a time, there was a talented musician named Melody. Lived in a bustling city. Her love for the piano flowed through her veins as if the music itself was etched in her soul. When her fingers caressed the ivory keys, and a surge of electric energy coursed through her body, awakening every fiber of her being. The harmonious melodies that emanated from her instrument were like whispers of pure bliss, captivating everyone fortunate enough to listen. It was as if her heart danced to the rhythm of each note, and her spirit soared with every crescendo. On the other side of the city, there was a dimly lit room. There lived another musician named Discord. His insecurities burdened his shoulders, and his perpetual cloud of self-doubt loomed over him. With each stroke of the bow against the violin, his inner turmoil spilled out, creating discordant sounds that mirrored the chaos within his mind. His every note was tainted with frustration, as if he were in an endless battle with himself. But then, one fateful day, Melody and Discord paths converged. And as they spoke, Melody's eyes sparkled with radiant enthusiasm, and her voice resonated with unwavering passion. And it was as if a brilliant light shone within her, illuminating the room, enveloping Discord in his warmth. The energy surrounding Melody was infectious, igniting a glimmer of hope in Discord's heart. With Melody's guidance, Discord tentatively embarked on a transformative journey as he embraced his strength and nurturing his talents. A flicker of confidence emerged within him. With every stroke of the bow, a newfound sense of purpose pulsed through his veins, infusing his music with an enchanting allure. The once dissonant notes began to weave together a tapestry of emotion, painting vivid landscapes within the hearts of those who listened. Melody, too, continued to blossom. Her fingers danced effortlessly across the piano keys, evoking a symphony of emotion. The sheer joy that radiated from her was palpable, casting a spell of enchantment on all who heard her play. Each melody she created became an expression of her innermost self, transcending the boundaries of sound and touching the very depths of the human soul. And so Melody and Discord embarked on a remarkable journey together, their internal states transformed by the power of embracing their strengths. Melody exuded a radiant of energy, her heart brimming with uncontainable passion and unwavering self-belief. Discord, once burdened by self-doubt, now radiated a newfound confidence. His music, a testament to the beauty that can be unleashed when one embraces their true self. So, friends, this is just, okay, I should go on and finish the story. In a city that once divided by discordant notes, the harmonious sounds of melody and discords intertwine, creating a symphony of resilience and growth. Their internal states mirrored the transformative power of embracing strengths and virtues and reminding all those who listen to that true well-being and the life of fulfillment lie in the embrace of one's unique talents and unwavering pursuit of their passion. Friends, it's a story. It's a story about two people, two musicians, talented. One burdened with self-doubt, self-criticism, unsure, unbalanced, sees the music in a particular way and plays or expresses that music in a particular way. Melody, full of self-belief, full of identifying her strength, plays the music in another way. And Discord finally realizing that paying attention to the weaknesses or the doubt that he has about himself doesn't pay off. It is only when we embrace our strengths that we become a thriving and flourishing human being. Now, nice story? Yeah, I'd say so. But I want to put this to the test, because this is more than a story. It's about personal experiences of a human being. That when we are limited by our own self-beliefs, self-limiting beliefs, our own negative and critical thinking, our view of the world dramatically changes. We draw out of that certain emotions that make life difficult and hard. And of course, our behaviors follow suit. So friends, if you are of a mind that's self-critical and that you have negative thinking and they have a fixed mindset and you have limiting beliefs, one can expect emotions like stress, anxiety, depression even, upset, frustration, or in Dr. Silkworth's words, restless, irritable, and discontent. That's what we can expect. The logic is undeniable. However, if we can change our focus and create a more balanced view of ourselves, we then can embrace what Melody learned naturally. It is in our strength that we can celebrate our lives. Now, I want to prove it to you. I just don't want to leave you with the story. I got an exercise for you. If you have a piece of paper in front of you, I would like to ask you to write your name with your dominant hand 5 times. Would you go ahead and do that now if you're willing? Now, most of you know what's next. I now would ask you to write your name with your non-dominant hand 5 times. Okay. So let's just take a couple of people sharing a little bit. Very short, laser sharing here. Don't get into a whole big story, just laser sharing. The question is, what did you feel like to write your name 5 times with your dominant hand? Anybody?
In control.
Yeah.
Competent.
Yeah.
Accomplished.
Yeah.
Confident, normal.
Yeah.
Easy.
Relaxed.
Easy.
Comfortable.
Good.
Messy.
Okay.
Automatic.
Reminded me of when I was a child and I used to write my name all the time.
Ah.
I felt rushed.
Okay. Now, who would like to describe the feelings associated writing your name with your non-dominant hand?
Clumsy.
Chaotic.
Went better than I thought.
More
focused.
My writing when I was drunk.
Yeah.
Yes, I had a stroke.
Messy, out of proportion.
Childlike.
Big letters.
Oh my God, mine was more tidy.
Legible.
All over the place.
Okay.
I had to
Now,
think more. Questioning, why am I doing this?
yeah.
It got better with each one.
Slow.
Okay. Yeah.
Reminded me of
Okay. Let's get on to the next question. Did your
reminded
writing
me
get
of when I
better?
brushed my hand and I had to clean my teeth and learn to wipe my bottom a different way because my dominant hand didn't work.
Ah,
And it took time to become comfortable with.
yeah. Yeah. So did your writing improve over the course of writing the name 5 times with your dominant hand?
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay. Could
No.
you do
Got more relaxed.
okay? Could you do better?
No, I
if
got
you
tired. No,
Could
it
you
definitely got better. Yes,
Could you get better if you practice writing with your dominant hand, and how much effort would that require?
To slow down, to take away the feeling of incompetence.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. You see, the exercise itself, it really outlines what we experience when we're trying to correct a defect of character, when we're trying to fix something, when we're trying to approach our weaknesses as our full attention. It's awkward, it's hard, we don't feel competent in doing it because these things return to us. And we begin to get a sense how life can be difficult if, in fact, we are focused in on fixing our weaknesses, rather than paying attention to what we do well. You see, when we write with our dominant hand, we do that well. It's easy. It gives us energy. We're kind of relaxed and we're moving forward. It doesn't take motivation to do it. It's just simply there for us. So we begin to see the awkwardness in which we have in this idea of fixing defects of character, paying our full attention to them, allowing them to define who we are, rather than paying attention to our strengths. So that is the reason for the exercise. And we begin to see whether using our non-dominant hand, our performance is low. And versus when we do something we know how to do, something else happens to us. We do feel competent. We do feel energized, and we do feel enthusiastic because we're in our wheelhouse of talent. Now, are these new ideas I wanted to share a little bit with you about this idea. Is this new? And first of all, I want to go back, way back. This is called virtue, is portrayed as a means to surpass societal standards and discovers one's potential, dignity, and abilities. It asserts that virtue liberates. Practicing our strengths actually liberates us and enables us to fulfill God's given potential. Going back to the sacred identity idea. The sacred identity that we've been given is huge. If you think about it, what have we been given? We've been given many things, like love, some compassion, empathy, understanding, temperance, justice, all kinds of things we've been given to. So we're able to draw out our sacred identity when in fact we are practicing the God-given strengths that we've been given as gifts, by the way. This has got nothing to do with ego. It's not being proud of something. It is only using what's been given as a gift. So in contrast, a lack of virtue leads to vice and immorality. See, it's hard to live into the idea that we're broken and smashed and we're not good enough and we're self-critical. It only leads to one place. And that is continue to be the reduction of our sacred identity. It's as if we contrasted what God has presented to us and be distracted by us playing God to know what our life should look like. And then we get confused. We get lost. We just don't know what to do. And really what matters here is our focus. So here's some bullet points. The word virtue derives from Greek and Latin origins, representing character excellence and effectiveness in action. See, Wilson was pointing to this when he talks about practicing principles. This is not contrary to AA or the 12-step philosophy, although the conversation has been overinvestment in defects of character. So what we want to do is approach something rather than avoid something. Ancient and medieval ethics focused on character development and virtue cultivation. This is back in ancient Greece, friends. Virtue has a history of thousands and is considered valid and essential for good characters or building good societies. Virtue serves as a moral compass, unlocking human flourishing and fulfillment. I want to stop here and I want you to get this. This is so important because most of us in the addiction work, recovery field, think so very poorly of ourselves. And we're continuing to condemn ourselves in ways in which we're probably unaware. And sometimes we are aware, but a lot of the times we're not. We continue to say, what's wrong with me? Why am I not good enough? And you remember every mistake that you made, and that somehow you made it mean something about yourself. You see, the moral compass is about unlocking human flourishing and fulfillment. It is about moving towards that, using our strengths, our principles, our virtues, however you really want to say this. And as we practice them in all our life domains, we become flourishing, thriving, a full functioning human being, which is very different than how most of us see ourselves. Most of us see ourselves as a bird with a bruised wing. Well, I have addiction. I have these labels in my life. If only my parents said this and that and this. This is the condition. I'm explaining the way I behave and defending it in a way. And yet, what's in our power, what is in front of us, if we choose to look, is the beautiful virtues in which we were given and that we underutilized. We get lost in the fog. Friends, I'm saying to you, it is possible for each of you to unlock this human potential so that you can flourish and be fulfilled as an effective human being. Wisdom. Well, again, Wilson talks about this intuitive thought. We come to learn something, and it speaks about wisdom in a human being precedes understanding virtue, and it is a fundamental for self-knowledge and a virtuous life. You see, we're in a culture that needs to know. We don't rely on things like intuition very much because we don't believe we have the wisdom there to begin with. And yet, what's been given to us is wisdom. And it even precedes the fundamental self-knowledge. It exists. It pre-exists before we're even starting this journey. We need to learn to tap into that voice, that nudging, that urging, that we call intuition, to help direct us, to help move us in the right direction. But we have to be moored in the true self. This doesn't just come as a willy-nilly kind of approach to life. You have to be moored in this idea of a sacred identity. The virtues including humility, justice, and courage nurture wisdom and enhance rational reasoning. So we begin to start making better choices for ourselves. You know, when you feel good about yourself and you think that you are enough, when you transfer or transform from this, I'm not good enough, to I am enough, we then make better decisions for ourselves, better personal choices. It is a natural progression of transformative living. It's only when we think poorly of ourselves, that we're full of fear and anxiety and upset, and we mix that terrible mix into our decisions, that we make poor choices. Virtue empowers individuals to think and act based on moral principles rather than societal influences. We begin to know what's important. We begin to prioritize our life. See, these are all things that have been given to us in ancient Greece. I want you to remember that. This is not new information. This is not new psychology. This is very old. Now, a name you'll know, I know you'll know it, Ben Franklin. 1706 and 1790. I'm just going to share my screen for a moment. I just got one of his cards up here. Can you see that okay? See, what he did was carry around a scorecard. You see? And every day of the week, he listed his 13 virtues, and he would just put a dot when he noticed he did something. Now, Ben Franklin, and as far as I'm concerned, in any history of anybody, was the most brilliant man alive. He was an inventor. He was an author. He was a newspaper man. He was a politician. He was an ambassador. There isn't anything that Ben Franklin didn't accomplish was anything less than miraculous. He was an incredible human being. And someone might say, and I can understand them saying this, well, he was brilliant. He was a genius. I'm not a genius. And I can't argue with that. But what I can suggest to you is he left us some breadcrumbs to follow a path that will help us improve the way in which we think, the way in which we feel, and the way in which we behave. And it has to do with the focusing in on strengths. You notice in this list here, called temperance, there isn't anything in there that's negative. There isn't any concern with the man's defect of character. And I can assure you that he had some. And yet, What do we do in most of our 12-step room conversations? We continue to talk about how bad we are, how weak we are, how selfish we are. And what I'm saying to you and what I'm asking you to think about today is in that first part of that set aside prayer. Set aside everything you think you know about yourself. Each of us in this room and each human being, both living and in the past, every one of us have had defects of character. There isn't any person alive or dead that escaped from this characteristic that we have, which you could call it weaknesses, shortcomings, or defects of character. Every human being has had them. There are people who accept that as a condition, learn to cope and learn to be resilient with them, because these things will prevent our well-being, and there's no argument there, but to focus in on their strengths, like Melody in her piano music, teaching Discord how to play his music. See, he always had the talent, but he couldn't express it because where he was focusing. So Ben Franklin, in 1706 to 1790, was doing these ideas.